I'm Dr. Fellows. I'm an adjunct professional faculty member at UC Berkeley in the Haas School of Business. And as you are aware, UC Berkeley is one of the top schools in the world. And I have been there since the year 2010. So today, what I'm going to talk to you about is entrepreneurship and startup ecosystems in universities, global trends. So entrepreneurial university ecosystems, let's talk about that very quickly. The term entrepreneurial university ecosystem broadly refers to the idea of universities acting as entrepreneurs to contribute to regional and national economic development. The entrepreneurial activity by universities can potentially cover a broad range of activities such as patenting and licensing, creating incubators, science, parks and university spin-outs, and investing equity in startups, among other indicators. As a consequence, however, there is often a lack of consensus on not only what constitutes an entrepreneurial university ecosystem, but also the pathways through which such an ecosystem could be effectively functionalized and would thrive. In consequence, however, to understand university entrepreneurship and the resulting ecosystem, micro-level phenomena related to individuals, university, and firm-level activities needs to be vertically connected to macro-level outcomes in terms of regional, national economic development, R&D intensity, and social benefits. This requires recognizing and understanding academic entrepreneurship beyond the prevalent focus of linear, patent-focused technology transfer processes. For the sake of brevity, let's focus on 4 areas that are considered to co-create an entrepreneurial university ecosystem. That is Entrepreneurial University, technology transfer offices, university spin-outs, and the environmental context of the universities itself. So now let's talk about the Entrepreneurial University, technology transfers, office, university spin-outs, and the entrepreneurial context of the universities. Why is this important? So in the wake of the economic downturn caused in the financial crisis in 2008, governments in high-income countries have increasingly sought a role for universities to stimulate regional economic development. The term entrepreneurial university ecosystem is often used in this context to describe universities acting entrepreneurially to contribute to economic development. So how should a university actually become an entrepreneurial university and expand entrepreneurial capacity? This is the question. How can this actually be done? And UC Berkeley actually has been very good at this. Local institutional and cultural factors and prior patterns of regional economic development need to be taken into consideration to design the incentives and the policy levers for each university system to become more entrepreneurial. However, universities play a critical role as drivers of economic growth by expanding their entrepreneurial activity. In consequence, universities within other countries will likely need to accelerate the success rate at which they form companies based on academic research and encourage graduate entrepreneurship, contributing to growth of R&D intensive firms. Most successful U.S. ecosystem cases do not necessarily translate effectively for foreign-based universities aiming to achieve similar entrepreneurial outcomes. In particular, let's focus on London, for example. It's often cited as one of the premier startup hubs of Europe as a sizable venture capital activity and is seen to attract global talent. The role of the London-based universities are the extent to which these act as engines of entrepreneurial activity in London, which needs to be understood better in the broader policy context of entrepreneurial university ecosystems. And the same goes for India, for an example. So I'm going to give you examples of entrepreneurial universities here in the United States. UC Berkeley, of course, is number 1. There's also Stanford. There's also Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. I'm sure you've heard of that university, which operate within established technology-driven innovation hubs, such as Silicon Valley and Kendall Square in the United States, are often cited as models for successful universities operating entrepreneurially. However, there are limited examples of universities achieving entrepreneurial success on such scales elsewhere. So the question is why? What is causing that to occur? Why is UC Berkeley, Stanford, and MIT, why are they so great at entrepreneurial universities? So UC Berkeley has a gateway to innovation. UC Berkeley is the #1 public university, and I want you to note this. UC Berkeley is also part private. So UC Berkeley is part public, part private, and that helps it to gain opportunities from getting monies from the federal government, being a public university, and gaining monies from private persons and private organizations, being part private university. It is also #2 university for entrepreneurs. It's #4 in the most successful founders. There are 1,652 startup founders. There are 1,481 startups, $1 billion plus in research funding, 1,649 active inventions, 774 active patents, and 814 active foreign patents. So what is the roadmap to success? For UC Berkeley specifically, there's academics, resources, and competition. And this gives you a snapshot of everything that UC Berkeley does. We've got campus life, we've got resources, we've got competitions. There are courses that are offered, lots of events, student groups, research, as I just discussed, different courses that are very critical. And one of the courses centers on entrepreneurship. There's the Berkeley Haas Entrepreneurship Program, the Bloom Center for Developing Economies. You've got intellectual property and industry alliances. There's the Accelerate program, the Big Ideas Contest. The list literally goes on and on and on. So if you can see on your screen, you'll see just an example of some of the things that UC Berkeley is doing. And this creates the roadmap to success for an entrepreneurial university. There are also incubators, as you see at the bottom of the screen, and also venture capitalists, as well as I spoke before, about government grants. There's also the National Science Foundation that gives monies to UC Berkeley as well, and that's part of the federal government. So let me talk to you about the Big Ideas Contest, which is very critical to the success of the Entrepreneurial University at UC Berkeley. Big Ideas is an innovation ecosystem that provides training, networks, recognition, and funding to interdisciplinary teams of students who have transformative solutions to real-world problems. So that's the interconnection right there. You've got students who are working to transform organizations and provide solutions to resolve and address real-world problems and situations. Eligible students are invited to submit a 3-page proposal. And what they will do is there will be 30 teams who will be participating. And out of those 30 teams, there will be 15 people that will be appointed to receive awards and grants to actually address real world problems. Again, this is a part of the Entrepreneurial University at UC Berkeley. So now let's talk about UC Berkeley Research at a glance. Again, it's the #1 top university in the United States with the highest number of highly ranked graduate programs, 10 Nobel laureates, 144 members of the National Academy of Sciences, and 251 fellows of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. This is very important. Again, this is critical to the reason why UC Berkeley is so successful, not only as a university, but also as an entrepreneurial university. So this is the information that I had to provide in the brief 15 minutes that I have to speak. So if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, please do not hesitate to email me. You can always call me as well. Do we have any questions before I log off? You know, what was very important, sir, and that's an excellent question. What's important is that there needs to be collaboration, cooperation, high level of communication, and there has to be teamwork, and there has to be an interconnection between the thinking and the decision making. And oftentimes, if you don't have all of those things lining up together, it's not going to work. So what you have in other countries is you have people who are not really cooperating, collaborating, communicating correctly, making strategic decisions on a combined collaborative level. That's part of the issue. And that's part of the issue, not only in Europe, but also in India, also in Asia, in the other parts of the world. Here in the United States, one thing that we take very seriously is entrepreneurship. That is what has built the United States, and that's what makes it very successful. And so at UC Berkeley, they wanted to make sure that the university was a university that was top-notch in all areas, and specifically when it relates to entrepreneurship. And that's why they wanted to become an entrepreneurial university. They encourage students, and I encourage my students, if you have a good idea, tell your professor about it. Speak about it, talk about it as much as possible. Let people know about your idea. Bring people along with you so that they can help you with that idea and to make that idea a success. That is what is missing in the rest of the world. That's what we have here. And I'm being, I'm overly simplifying it. It's much, much deeper than that. I mean, you could write a dissertation on entrepreneurial universities alone. Well, the university is part public and part private. They designed the university to be that way because, again, it helps them to become even more successful as not only a university of higher education in educating their students to the best possible capacity, but also because they are part public and part private, they are able to get money from private donors, individual citizens, and also from the federal government. That's the way the university was founded and organized, and it's been that way since the 1800s, and it's still that way to this day. That is what makes it very, very successful, believe it or not. Now, it can complicate things, but it also makes it very successful. So, it's a double-edged sword, but, it does work. Well, it's very important. First, you have to start at the very beginning. You have to conduct research extensively to find out who the true target market is. You may think the best target market is a certain market. However, if you don't conduct your research extensively and comprehensively, you're not going to be really hitting the right target. So the most important thing is to start from the very beginning. Conduct the research, get the kinds of data that you really need to truly inform you about who that true target market is. It may be more than one target market. It may not be just one. And that's what people are missing the mark on in other parts of the world. You've got to start at the beginning, conduct the research. And when you say, which is better, this or that, it's all of the above. Everything is interconnected. You cannot compartmentalize things. You got to make sure that you interconnect everything and look at the whole picture. Take a step back, look at the entire picture. But again, you can't look at the entire picture until you conduct the research and collect the data.